Welcome to the Inquiry 1.0. Today, a brutal story of Paul Ferris attacking and getting revenge on the feared Welsh Clan who had caused him so much terrible torment throughout his young life and beatings and psychological damage. This is from his book, The Ferris Conspiracy, and it's chapter 6, A Dish Best Eaten Cold. There's an Amazon link in the description. Highly recommend you get this book. It's fantastic. I'd recognise a Welsh anywhere, even at a distance on a dark night. Up ahead of me on Royston Road, John Welsh was walking casually in my direction. He was one of the older members of the tribe in his late 30s and had never done me harm directly. Nevertheless, he was a Welsh, contributing to their power and the scourge of anyone weaker. As I huddled into my jacket, sheltering from the chill of the night's breeze, we passed each other at a bus stop just across the road from the Proven Mill Inn, Arthur Thompson's pub. Turning abruptly, I drew an open razor from my pocket and silently slit his throat from ear to ear. As I walked smartly on, I didn't look back but could hear him gurgle and rattle before falling to the deck. He almost died that night and never spoke normally again. He would carry the scar for the rest of his life, and that was just fine by me. One down, I mumbled to myself. More to follow. Nobody had a clue who slashed John Welsh till many months later. I didn't seek to boast about my exploits in taking care of one of the scheme's most despised figures. My closest mates were not even told. The business of Ferris and the Welshes was an entirely personal matter and would stay that way till it finished, or rather, I finished them. At this time, I was still living with my sister, Kath, in Barrowfield, but slipping in and out of Black Hill at will. The tactic rattled those hunting my hide since they'd no idea where to find me. While Barrowfield was useful for self-preservation, it also stopped any possibility of those bastards going to my parents' house. They even left my friend's house alone, knowing that I wasn't there. The brothers Grimm were beginning to realise that if they made trouble, I would slip back into the scheme and create hell on the wheels. Other Welshes had to be had, and I laid an ambush one night, with my friend George Redmond backing me up. We crouched in the shadows opposite a tenement in Black Hill's Greenside Street, where most of the Welsh brothers were attending a party. My game plan was simply to take them on, in whatever order they emerged, waiting all night if needs be. As George and I hid in some bushes, we heard a commotion. A girl I'd known at school, Eileen Bonner from Royston, had come from the party house. Eileen had been friendly towards me at one time, when it would have been easier to freeze me out. I watched carefully as Tam Monaghan emerged, caught up with Eileen and tried to coax her into a bit of sex. She was having none of it. Monaghan began to pull at her clothing and push her about, and Eileen was retaliating in what was bound to be a losing battle. A few other guys had turned up and were hovering nearby like gawky, nooky vultures waiting for the kill and their share of the pickings. For certain parties around those streets, an enforced gangbang was viewed as just a normal night's entertainment. Not while we were watching. George and I nodded at each other and moved. As I walked quickly from my hiding place, I was just in time to see Tam Monaghan punch Eileen over a hedge. Pulling out two knives, I rammed one into Monaghan's chest and went after the others. Whitey, a well-known gluehead, and this evil shite called Johnny Rotten, a cousin of the Welshes, squared up to me. These guys always went around tooled up and drew their blades. First, Whitey rushed at me, and after a flurry of thrusts and parries, I managed to slice him down the arm, leaving him howling, retreating. Rotten charged me with his shoulder, sending me backwards onto a fence and jamming my neck between two spars. I looked up in time to see a Stanley blade slice down my cheek and chin. As Rotten, razor in hand, leaned over my prostrate body, I reached my arm around, thrusting my knife blade hard and deep up his anus. He buckled and screamed, and I scrambled to my feet. Unknown to me, George Redmond had opted out and left the scene in a hurry, allowing a fourth rapist to escape. At the time, I was angry with George, but later understood that he didn't carry the same luggage as me. That unbearable intolerance of tormentors. There were angry shouts from their party close, and it was time to vamoose. The wound to my face was deeper and longer than the run of the mill battle scar, so I took myself off to the casualty unit of the Royal. Later that night, lying on in a bed in one of the hospital's curtained partition cubicles, I heard familiar grunts from next door. It was the brothers Grimm, the Welshes, visiting one of their wounded comrades and asking about me. "Where's the wee CUNT staying? Do you think he'll be at his mother's house?" What about the fucking Redmonds or Deegans? He's close to them, eh? Biting my lip to prevent the sniggers, I gripped my one remaining knife already open in my pocket. Earlier that night, I would have had them right there in the disinfectant-smelling ward. But as enough is enough, and besides, I like to hoodwink the thick thugs. The story of the battle spread and was to do us no harm in the Black Hill pecking order. Monaghan had almost died. My blade pierced his chest through a nipple and missed his heart by a fraction. Whitey had bled a lot, but not as much as Johnny Rotten, who limped and stood up for months. All three of the scum were senior members of the Proven Young team and were close to the Welshes, who maintained their rummage for revenge. That was probably the first time that people in Black Hill viewed me as a contender. They were all terrified of the Welsh family, the Kennets and their assorted hangers-on, but I was the one doing the fighting. It was a role that suited me better than that of the young Paul Ferris sent scampering for his life every day. At least now I had self-respect and dignity. I knew it was dangerous with every action, inviting major grief. Yet being quiet and passive was far from safe. These guys loved to attack a soft touch. I felt good about myself for the first time in many years, but I was far from finished with them. Because of my growing reputation, I was invited to join a select criminal syndicate run by two brothers, Harry and Frank. Good friends both. They specialised in cash bag snatches and described the routine. Maybe I was getting too cocky and didn't listen well enough. George Redmond and I were arrested and charged with assault and robbery for our totally fluffed efforts in grabbing a bank bag from travel agent staff in Airdrie. It was a lesson in the need for careful planning. We were to pay heavily for. As a first offender, I was sent to Long Riggin Remand Centre to await trial, while George, being older, was sent off to Barrel. I was 17 years old and in prison for the first time. When I went into the jail, my feet seemed to become heavier. My senses stretched taut, and I ached for something familiar. Of course, the point is that there is nothing familiar or personal. Prisons were for punishment rather than detention, even on remand when you were yet to be tried and still innocent in the eyes of the law. The loss of liberty and the frustration of containment is a punishment, whatever any old lag or right-wing politician tells you to the contrary. Loss of your freedom is punishment, the first time and the last time. Eventually you learn how to cut off through, though never entirely to relax in your cage. Punishment enough without the extras of staff treating you like dog shite and the ever-present threat of violence from all quarters. A few weeks later I was released on bail, trusted by the state to turn up voluntary at my trial. George and I were for the high jump, so I opted to give the court a body swerve. George was brought in on the Barrel special bus, a prison on wheels, and sentenced to 22 months. The court issued a warrant for my arrest, and now for the first time, I was a wanted man. Okay, guys, so that's the end of that section. As I say, the link's in the description. Fantastic book, this, and well worth a read. All right, guys, take care.